immigration laws to protect our country.
And looking to the future, the caravan has arrived at the U.S.
We've
border.
been watching it. We've been watching it.
And I'm just wondering, in your opinion, or your estimation, what percentage of those people do you believe are deserving of asylum in the U.S.?
Well, I won't get into percentages, but we are a nation of laws. We have to have borders. We don't have borders, we don't have a country. And I've been watching for weeks as the caravan came up. And you know, the Mexican laws are very tough on immigration, extremely tough. And it started out with way over 1,000 people. I guess now it's down to about 100 going all through Mexico. People don't realize what a big country it is, but it came down by a lot. And now we're working on the border with the worst laws any country, no matter where you go, all over the world. They can't even believe it. And we're doing the best we can with it. But we have to have changes in Congress, and we have to have it quickly. We need a wall, number one. And you see that right now, you know, where they are, even though it's not a particularly good wall, and even though a small percentage can climb to the top, they have to be in extremely good shape. But a small percentage can climb that particular wall. We have a wall that's much more difficult. But if you didn't have that, you'd have thousands of people just pouring into our country. You got to have a wall. And we need border security. And we will have border security. As you know, we're sending many, many National Guardsmen down to the border. Most of them are already there. And that's having a big impact. But we need a change in the law. Catch and release is ridiculous. If they touch our property, if they touch our country, essentially you catch them and you release them into our country. That's not acceptable to anybody. So we need a change in the law.
Mr. President, when you were sitting down in the Oval Office with President Trump, who ran on not wanting to be the policeman for the world, what kind of arguments did you make to convince him to continue a military presence for the U.S. in your country, and what arguments did you make to him? How receptive was he?
I can't understand what you mean by United States presence in my country. They send a training team based on their experiences to train our officers at some of our training institutions and move to the crisis area to see how those they train are performing. I think this is one of the best the United States could do for us to stabilize the country.
And he agreed with that?
I do, very much so. That's why I thank him for it.
Thank you.
Well, we more and more are, because it's a very fair question, we more and more are not wanting to be the policemen of the world. And we're spending tremendous amounts of money for decades on policing the world, and that shouldn't be our priority. We want to police ourselves, and we want to rebuild our country. And the President understands that, and they've come a long way. They're doing a great job. We're contributing to that job, but they have done a great job. What we do want to do, though, is open Nigeria and other countries up to trade, because we have spent over the last decade a number that's so large you wouldn't even believe it. And I think we'll be treated in a reciprocal fashion now, as of today. So I think that's going to happen. And I have great respect for the President, okay? How about Jordan Fabian? Where's Jordan? Jordan, the Hill?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about Iran. The Israeli Prime Minister just gave a speech very critical of their nuclear program. I want to ask if you have made up your mind to pull out of that deal, and if you do pull out of that deal, are you worried that it sends the wrong message to North Korea as you seek to enter nuclear talks with Kim Jong-un?
No, I think it sends the right message. You know, in 7 years, that deal will have expired, and Iran is free to go ahead and create nuclear weapons. That's not acceptable. 7 years is tomorrow. That's not acceptable. So, no, if anything, it's proven right what Israel has done today with the news conference. And Prime Minister Netanyahu just gave a very, I don't know if everybody's seen it, but I got to see a little bit of it. And that is just not an acceptable situation. And I've been saying that's happening. They're not sitting back idly. They're setting off missiles, which they say are for television purposes. I don't think so. So we'll see what happens. I'm telling you what I'm doing, but a lot of people think they know. And on or before the 12th, we'll make a decision. That doesn't mean we won't negotiate a real agreement. You know, this is an agreement that wasn't approved by too many people. And it's a horrible agreement for the United States, including the fact, Mr. President, that we gave Iran $150 billion and $1.8 billion in cash. Nigeria would like some of that. $1.8 billion in cash and $150 billion. You know what we got? We got nothing. We got nothing. So that doesn't mean I wouldn't negotiate a new agreement. We'll see what happens. But I think, if anything, what's happening today and what's happened over the last little while and what we've learned has really shown that I've been 100% right.
And President Buhari, I want to ask you, you're the first leader from sub-Saharan Africa to visit President Trump here at the White House. Did you address his reported comments from earlier this year when he reportedly used vulgar language to describe African nations?
Well, I'm very careful with what the press says about others and myself. I'm not sure about, you know, the validity or whether that allegation against the president was true or not. So the best thing for me is to keep quiet.
We didn't discuss it. And you do have some countries that are in very bad shape and very tough places to live in. But we didn't discuss it because the president knows me and he knows where I'm coming from, and I appreciate that. We did not discuss it. Mr. President, you can ask a question.
Yes, that lady is already up. Yes.
For the U.S. to increase its import of crude oil from Nigeria?
No, we can't tell the United States what to do. But luckily for us, we have got market for our crude oil elsewhere. But the progress made by the United States in technology is certainly frightening for us that are a mono economy. I hope technology will allow them to use our crude for its quality for petrochemicals, be it light one, vis-a-vis the one they are getting from shale. Thank you.
I think maybe more than anything else, what we discussed today was our agricultural products going into Nigeria, which Nigeria wants, but we have certain barriers that don't allow that to happen. So for the good of our farmers, U.S. farmers, and for the good of Nigeria and all of Africa, it's very important that we are able to sell our great agricultural products into Nigeria, and that will happen, and we're going to be working on that right away. Okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Well, it was an interesting thought, and I had that thought. We're looking at various countries, including Singapore, and we are also talking about the possibility of the DMZ, Peace House, Freedom House, and there's something that I thought was intriguing. I think that some people maybe don't like the look of that, and some people like it very much. I threw it out today as an idea. I also told President Moon, and through President Moon, we connected with North Korea. There's something that I like about it because you're there. You're actually there, where if things work out, there's a great celebration to be had on the site, not in a third-party country. So we are looking at the possibility of doing it in that location. We're also looking at various other countries, including Singapore. We'll say this, the good news, everybody wants us. It has the chance to be a big event. And the United States, I was talking to John Bolton about this a little while ago, the United States has never been closer to potentially having something happen with respect to the Korean Peninsula that can get rid of the nuclear weapons, can create so many good things, so many positive things, and peace and safety for the world. So we'll see what happens. You know, I often say, who knows? Who knows? Maybe a lot of things change, but Kim Jong-un, who has been very open and very straightforward so far, I can only say again so far, but he's talking about getting rid of the site, which was their big site. He's talking about no research, no launching of ballistic missiles, no nuclear testing. and he has lived up to that for a long period of time, longer period of time than anybody has seen. So we are looking at that as a potential site, yes. I think it would be very interesting. I think it would be a great celebration if it works out well. And if it doesn't work out well, that's the way it goes.
Are you still confident the summit will happen? Is there anything that...
Oh, yeah, I think the summit is going to happen. They very much want it. We certainly would like to see it. I think the summit will happen. And personally, I think it's going to be a success, but we'll see. I will say this. If it's not a success, got to get rid of the nuclear weapons. If it's not a success, I will respectfully leave. It's very simple. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Why do mothers and children flee violence?
All right, a Fox News alert. The president wrapping up a news conference with Nigeria's president at the White House in the Rose Garden there after Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu accused Iran of lying about its nuclear program, revealing new evidence of Tehran's plans to develop. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. He's ready. The president just renewing his call for a border wall as a caravan of migrants reaches the U.S.-Mexican border as economic and security issues top the agenda for today's White House meeting with Nigeria. The president meeting with President Buhari there in the Oval Office, and then coming out to do a press conference in the Rose Garden. They talked about a range of issues, including Nigeria's economy and also the problems of extremism that the Nigerian president there is trying to figure out how to work with the president in order to get more help in order to fight entities like organizations like Boko Haram. President Trump was also asked about today's breaking news, and that is the Iran deal. We have Fox team coverage, Connor Powell in Jerusalem, with new details on Iran's secret nuclear weapons program. But let's begin with Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts, who did this quick turnaround for us there. Fascinating press conference, John, in the Rose Garden today. There's a lot of news, but let's start with what you took away from what the president said about the breaking news after Prime Minister Netanyahu revealed that evidence about Iran's nuclear ambitions.
I was hoping, actually, Dana, that the president was going to go into a little bit more detail about what Israel has shared with the United States, this Project Ahmad, which, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, was geared toward developing a nuclear weapon, and that all those files have been taken to a secret location and have been stored there, possible future use. But the president, I think, making some news there, saying that while the Iran deal is not the deal that he wants, he would be open to making a new deal, not tipping his hand as to what he is going to do on May the 12th, which is the next deadline for him to either sign waivers of sanctions against Iran or pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. But we will find out very soon what the president is poised to do. The other big piece of news that came out of the press conference this afternoon, Dana, I thought was at the very end when Major Garrett and I from CBS kind of tag teamed the president, got his interest piqued in what he tweeted this morning about potentially going to Panmunjom right there at the DMZ and the border between North and South Korea to a place called Peace House, which is where South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un met last week and had a very successful summit. The president saying he likes the idea of going there. He likes the idea of being right there. And so he floated that idea this morning. We have been told on numerous occasions by aides very close to the president, involved in the decision-making process of where they would meet, Dana, that Panmunjom was off the table. Seoul was off the table. Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, was off the table. But now the president's suggesting he wants to be there.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like we might have just lost John Roberts. If we can get back to him, we will. In the meantime, Prime Minister Netanyahu revealing evidence that Iran has a secret program to develop nuclear weapons and has lied about it for years. Here's what he said earlier.
Here's what the files included: incriminating documents, incriminating charts, incriminating presentations, incriminating blueprints, incriminating photos, incriminating videos, and more. We've shared this material with the United States, and the United States can vouch for its authenticity.
Connor Powell is live in Jerusalem. It's certainly late there, Connor, but it was interesting that to me that the Prime Minister delivered that entire presentation in English, making sure that when it was shown here in the United States, we would be able to absolutely understand what he's saying.
Yeah, the target is clearly President Trump and also people in the United States. There is a huge international effort right now to try to convince President Trump to either stay or leave this nuclear agreement. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been a vocal opponent, a really staunch opponent of this nuclear agreement since even before it was signed, while it was being negotiated. And today he basically laid out that case saying that Iran can't be trusted, that they're liars. They've been lying about their nuclear program not only in the 1990s, in the early 2000s as well. This is essentially Prime Minister Netanyahu's argument, is that Iran just simply can't be trusted. And he used intelligence information that, while new in terms of what we were seeing on screen today, was publicly known. Iran has denied in the past its nuclear program. That's not new to anyone. We've heard that for decades now. But the fact that they have complied so far with this agreement is sort of the central question right now. But Prime Minister Netanyahu laid out today essentially his argument that Iran can't be trusted, that they've lied about their program in the past, and that they are continuing to lie. Have a listen right now.
Even after the deal, Iran continued to preserve and expand its nuclear weapons know-how for future use. Why would a terrorist regime hide and meticulously catalog its secret nuclear files if not to use them at a later date?
So one of the important things here is to keep in mind that he didn't actually say that Iran has reconstituted its nuclear program. Essentially, he said that the program has been put on the shelf, that the files have been saved, that they've been lying about this program for decades now. And that's the really key point, because Secretary Mattis said just a few days ago that Iran is complying with the letter of the agreement. Essentially, they have not restarted their nuclear program. That they had a program is not in doubt, that they continue to have essentially the files on how to restart one. That nobody's denying that either, but they have allowed inspectors in. They have actually dismantled large parts of this nuclear program, and that's what Secretary Mattis says when it says that they're in compliance, essentially, that they are not reconstituting this nuclear program. And this is where the real tension is, Dana, is Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying they can't ever be trusted. They've lied in the past. They will lie in the future. They're probably lying right now. But the international inspectors, Secretary Mattis and others are saying, in terms of compliance, they are complying right now. The big question is, what does President Trump do in about 12 days' time when he has to decide whether or not to reauthorize the agreement? There's a lot of speculation that he will withdraw from it.
All right, Connor Powell, thanks for being up with us tonight, at your time, and we appreciate it. We'll see you probably tomorrow. Now let's bring in Sohrab Ahmari. He's a senior writer at Commentary Magazine and able to join me today. Connor Powell is describing this as information we kind of knew, but to me it felt like it was different. Your view?
Well, the basics we knew. We knew through Western intelligence agencies and the International Atomic Energy Agency that, that Iran had a program called the Ahmad program. It actually goes back to the 1980s to try to develop the know-how for a nuclear weapon. And we knew that later it turned into something else they called the SPND. And we knew that it was all run by a guy named Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who's both a physicist and a senior officer in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We knew all that. What's new is the sheer amount of detail that Prime Minister Netanyahu, presumably through Israeli intelligence methods, has compiled, which goes through the master plan of what it looks like, their modeling programs, PowerPoints, files, project overviews, which is really a feat of intelligence gathering.
Well, right. I mean, obviously the Israelis are very good at intelligence gathering. What do you think is the benefit to them of revealing all of that now?
I think the benefit, obviously, is to feed into the debate about what to do with the deal here in the U.S. I think he made it, what he laid out there really was an indictment of the Obama administration of how much it was willing to overlook, because in the lead up to the deal, Iran had this chance to come clean about its previous weaponization efforts. And the IAEA essentially released the report saying they've given up some information, but not everything, including they have not made Mr. Fakhrizadeh available. And so now we have, 3 years into the deal, and the president can point out that the whole deal, the prime minister can point out the whole deal is based on a lie. And no deal that's based on deception ultimately is worth staying in.
Talk to me about this morning. We got news about a strike in Syria, killing about a dozen pro-government forces. They're believed to be Iranian. There is, so far, no one claiming responsibility. How dangerous is the possibility of an actual direct fight between Israel and Iran right now?
Well, we have had numerous instances like this, and usually when there's no claim of responsibility, your best bet is to look to Jerusalem. This morning there's news that they've killed 60, 70 Iranian operators. That's just because Israel has a very clear red line, which is that Iranian facilities and strategic weapons cannot come close to a certain kind of geographic barrier close to Israel. And when they do, Israel acts very swiftly. Though that regime has gone on, and the Israelis have continually targeted going back to 2012, 2013, when these things have happened. And what's interesting to me is that the Iranians don't do much in response, which just shows that they are not this powerful force in the Middle East. When you act swiftly and confront them, they sort of take it.
What do you think the Iranians will do in response to Netanyahu's speech today?
We saw Prime Minister Zarif, the foreign minister, he went on Twitter and said the lying liars, lying and so on and so forth. But, they will push their allies, they will push the Europeans to press on Washington to not pull out of the deal.
But the Europeans now, having seen this evidence, will they then realize that the President Trump, has said he's not unwilling to try to do a different deal? I think the Europeans are going to have to try to be for what's going to happen if they want to actually try to contain this situation.
Yeah, and I think President Macron of France indicated that he's willing to do other things, but really the core of the deal is still problematic. In other words, repairing this deal, I think, is a mistake. The core of the deal is based on the idea that Iran can continue to just comply with the letter of it, and at the end of it end up with both the technical know-how and enough missile material to build a bomb.
And a renewed and improved economy.
That's right.
All right. Sohrab Ahmari, thank you for being here today. We appreciate that. More on Israel's evidence claiming Iran is lying to the world about its nuclear weapons development. Plus, the president just hours away from a deadline to avoid new tariffs on some of our closest allies. Could we be heading for a trade war? Oklahoma Senator James Lankford joins me right after the break. Nuclear weapons program for years, presenting detailed evidence recovered from Iran earlier this month. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford serves on the Intelligence Committee, and he joins me now. Pretty remarkable to see that presentation delivered in English from Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem back to us. Your thoughts on what it means about the deal going forward?
Well, it's a reaffirmation again that the key thing that Iran has looked for all along is time and money. They had the know-how. Now that's very, very clear. The two things they didn't have is time and money. The release of the sanctions released in billions and billions of dollars to Iran, and then they've been given 10 years of time to be able to help advance their program. So it is a big concern. When 2025 comes and this whole deal expires and sunsets, it gives Iran a clear lane to be able to move to having nuclear weapons, and that has always been a problem.
Do you have views on the idea that the president talked about, and it's been sort of rumored for a couple of weeks, but he said just in that press conference that he is willing to consider proposing a new deal and scrapping the current one? Has the Senate weighed in on what that new deal must include if it's going to get approval?
We have not weighed in on what that would be. We'd be interested to be able to see what the president proposes. Last week, the French President Macron said, let's keep the existing one, let's just add an additional one. Obviously, Iran pushed back immediately on that one. That's not an unreasonable approach to be able to keep the sanctions and everything that are in place with this as well. But the big issue has been the open window after 2025. Obviously, it leaves the missile tests out of it, and Iran continues to test missiles over and over again without any real international response. Now, you can't just allow them to test missiles and to continue to advance towards that technology and assume they're not going to use it at some point.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on that. And, of course, the other thing I wanted to ask you, though, the president was asked by a reporter from The Hill in the press conference if pulling out of the Iran deal would send a bad message to North Korea. He said, no, I think it sends the right message that we're going to do a better deal and it's going to have to be verified. Your thoughts on that?
I do agree. That actually sends a solid message to North Korea. The whole focus is we won't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon at the end. That should be the same focus with North Korea. North Korea continues to threaten its neighbors. It is in a very unstable position at this point. What the Trump administration has done a very good job of putting real economic sanctions on North Korea, real diplomatic sanctions on North Korea, and it's pushing them to the table. We don't let off the gas at this point. Let's continue to be able to press through and be able to actually get real results, but not to pretend that this is something that's resolved with words. It's not resolved with words. And I think that's the real message to say to Iran, you can't just say you're complying with something, but still testing missiles, just like we're not going to allow North Korea to do the same thing.
Sir, in less than 10 hours, there's a deadline regarding the tariffs that the president had considered for our trading partners on steel and aluminum. But it's not without talking about farmers and that concern about our agricultural products that we want to send overseas, sell overseas. The president just mentioned we'd like to do even more in Nigeria, for example. And then he talked about farmers on Saturday night at his rally. Watch.
For decades, you were dealt one devastating blow after another. Disastrous trade deals, which I'm straightening out, and I'm not saying, hey, there may be a little pain for a little while, but ultimately for my farmers, I love my farmers. They're great patriots. Don't forget, the farmers have been doing lousy for 15 years, okay?
I think, Senator, I'm from Wyoming. You're in Oklahoma. We all love our farmers. That's true. And I wondered what you were hearing from people back home about their concerns, understanding that they want to give the president some latitude to do what he needs to do when it comes to the economy and our trade deals. But are they concerned that this could really hurt their business?
Sure, it is a big concern to them. When you talk about cutting off trade, whether it be NAFTA with Canada and with Mexico, or whether it be into Asia, or whether it be into Europe, trying to get access, quite frankly, to the European markets, those are all extremely important that we actually get resolved and get resolved as quickly as possible. Everyone understands there are some bad deals in the trade policy in the past, and it needs to be corrected. The key thing is it needs to be corrected quickly, because the more Americans are out of the loop in this process, the more other countries just look for other suppliers, and then we're not talking about just turning something back on. We're talking about having to recompete again to be able to re-win contracts. And a lot of our farmers really are on the edge of the knife at this point because they have to be able to plan for what's coming in the future. And if you don't know based on the trade policy, it's very difficult to be able to plan months in advance or a year in advance.
Right, especially when you have all those other factors you can't control, like the weather or things like that. Right. I noted that Oklahoma and China actually has a significant amount of trade in two-way trade goods, $2.75 billion. Oklahoma is the #2 trading partner behind Canada, certainly importing about 26.1% and exporting 4.1%. This relationship with China has certainly changed over the last 25 years. And America has some really good points that it needs to make for China to change the way it does business, but it's not without some concern for consumers, especially, and the business people that are trying to sell into those markets. I'll give you the final word.
No, that is a very big issue. So if China's dumping steel on us, which they are, and they're trying to work it through other countries to then target towards us, that's a big problem for all of our steel manufacturing and for what's happening here. But if we have, for instance, cotton coming out of Oklahoma, heading over to Asia and heading into China, that's also extremely important. Beef is another area that's extremely important. Pork, all these different products that we're actually sending out towards China, whether it be feed like Milo or whether it be cotton and produced goods, it is very important we keep that two-way trade going. So for our emphasis, the big deal is understanding this really is a global market, and it does help us to keep as many markets open as possible and to get these deals signed.
And that's because when we're given a chance to compete, Americans can certainly compete. All right, Senator James Lankford.
And the world wants to buy American goods.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't? All right, thank you. Israel accusing Iran of lying about its nuclear weapons program. So what does this mean for the Iran nuclear deal? With the president's decision just days away, a former member of the National... Breaking news as Israel accuses Iran of lying about its nuclear weapons program. Prime Minister Netanyahu presenting detailed evidence today as we get new developments on President Trump's planned meeting with Kim Jong-un, and protests are ongoing on our Mexico border. I'm joined with now by Michael Allen. He's from Beacon Global Strategies and a former member of the National Security Council during the George W. Bush administration. It's good to have you here. I feel like there are all these hot spots around the world that are happening all at once, but especially when it comes to Iran and North Korea. There is a connection, and the president was asked about it at the press conference today by a reporter from The Hill. Listen to the question and how he answered it.
No, I think it sends the right message. You know, in 7 years, that deal will have expired, and Iran is free to go ahead and create nuclear weapons. That's not acceptable. 7 years is tomorrow. That's not acceptable. So, no, if anything, it's proven right what Israel has done today with the news conference. And Prime Minister Netanyahu just gave a very, I don't know if everybody's seen it, but I got to see a little bit of it. And that is just not an acceptable situation.
I thought that we were going to have the question. Basically, the question was, does pulling out of the Iran deal make the North Koreans think that the United States isn't going to be solid in negotiations for its deal? And he said, no, the opposite is true. But your thoughts?
Now, look, I think what it says to the North Koreans is that we want a good deal. We want a better deal. We want one that's verifiable. And also, to get around to what Netanyahu said in Israel today, we want the North Koreans and the Iranians to be truthful in what we call a declaration. And that is, hey, look, come clean to us on everything that's happened in the past, and then let's talk about what the future looks like. What Netanyahu showed today, and is certainly illustrative for North Koreans, is that, listen, you're not being truthful for us, so we've got a big problem here.
One of the flaws in previous attempts at agreements with Iran and also North Korea has been the issue of verification. Is there something that can be done now, whether through new technologies in terms of surveillance or being able to get in and really understand what's happening, so that something like this that Israel puts forward today is all this new information, pretty extensive, and showing the intelligence that we have, when actually we should have been able to do this with the verification process?
Look, I think you're right. One of the biggest problems with the Iran deal is that the Iranians, would be able to shield military sites from us. That just doesn't make sense in a long-term verification regime if we can't get where we need to go, which happen to be the places that they would most likely be running a particular program. Also, Dana, I mean, it's wow, looking at what Netanyahu said today. We need to hear more about this, but it looks like, speaking of verification, that the Israelis may have been able to get into a warehouse downtown Tehran and steal up to 2 tons of documents. I mean, you talk about a real intelligence operation, but we shouldn't have to go to such extraordinary lengths to get the truth.
I think it was a real wake-up call for Iran to find out that actually the Israelis, I mean, I'm sure they know that the Israelis are good at intelligence, but I thought that that was extraordinary, and that they're willing to show the world what was actually going on. We're up against a deadline tonight at midnight regarding the tariffs issue, and in the European Union watching this very closely. But now they have this other situation with the Iran deal on top of it. The United States is actually in a pretty good position with a strong hand to play in trying to get the Europeans to go along with what President Trump wants. Am I correct on that? You don't have to say yes.
Well, I think at the end of the day, what we'll have to force is a sort of decision that the Europeans will have to make. Hey, listen, do you want to stand with us to try and get a better deal, or do you want to try and make do with what President Obama negotiated? So look, the Iran deal is going to be hanging out there at the same time that the president's making big judgments about trade and what exemptions we'll have against tariffs. All of this has got to come together in the president's mind here and at the National Security Council at the White House, and try and get a series of inducements so that we can get what we need out of the Europeans on the Iran deal and on our economic situation vis-a-vis the tariffs. So this is a lot of big decisions to be made here coming up in the month of May.
Well, if you love foreign policy, you've got to love the past couple of weeks. Michael Allen, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Vice President Pence checking out the building of a border wall right now as a caravan of migrants remains in limbo just across the border. Immigration officials turning away most of that group, saying the busy San Diego crossing is at capacity. With me is Mo Alithi, former spokesman for Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign, and Nan Hayworth is a member of the Independent Women's Forum Board of Directors and a former member of Congress. We've been talking about Iran, but at the same time, there is another foreign policy issue going on right now with Mexico, and the photographs coming out, the video coming out of this caravan that has finally made it to the border there. in some ways, I wondered, Nan, if you just feel like it was really playing into President Trump's hand, explaining like we have a real problem here. We've got to change our laws.
Absolutely. Sovereign borders are essential to national integrity, Dana. And the amazing thing is that the president actually put out a 4-pillar plan that even a majority of Democrats have supported, majority of community of color. DACA recipients, path to citizenship, in exchange for ending the visa lottery, which doesn't make sense, rationalizing extended family migration, and enhancing border security, wall, personnel, technology, administrative. Everybody supports that. There's no reason it can't get done, but it needs 60 votes in the Senate, and that's been the problem.
Actually, I noted, Mo, that Congress had this year more than 200 immigration-related bills were proposed in the past year. Most have not passed, and $1.6 billion was approved last month for the border fencing. It does not include concrete wall construction, and the president even said on Saturday night that he would even look to a shutdown in September if he doesn't get that money. Take a listen to that. I think we've got the sound.
We have to have borders, and we have to have them fast. And we need security. We need the wall. We're going to have it all. And again, that wall has started. We got $1.6 billion. We come up again on September 28th. And if we don't get border security, we'll have no choice. We'll close down the country because we need border security.
So you and I look at things from a communications point of view. The president, to me, feels like he's got the pieces in place to make his case.
Well, he's got the pieces in place to make his case to his base in a midterm election year. Whereas this may be playing into his hands for his supporters in this midterm, and it plays directly into Democratic supporters' hands for them reaching out to their base. Right? This continues to be one of the most polarizing issues on the political scene.
Immigration.
Where immigration is, right? Where you've got the same words, the same action will fire up the president's base like nothing else and fire up the Democratic base like nothing else. So for that very small sliver of independents that actually turn out to vote in a midterm year, that's the question.
But Mo, they like the president's plan. They
do, but they don't like how he's approached DACA. They don't like how he's approached the Dreamers. They want to see some comprehensive reform that deals with that. Everyone says they want to deal with the border and with border security. He had a deal on the desk that a bipartisan one that he walked away from.
I think what he just telegraphed, Nan, is that he's going to take this all the way up and then try to push for something in September when everyone's going to be under a lot of pressure. And again, that's what you do in politics, right? Timing is everything. Is going to try to push it then. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It seems like a long time ago and not that important now. We have all of these information, breaking news today. But Tim Alberta of Politico wrote this in a tweet. He's from Politico magazine. He said, every caricature thrust upon the national press that we are culturally elitist, professionally incestuous, socioeconomically detached, and ideologically biased is confirmed by this train wreck of an event. Journalists, the joke's on us. The White House Correspondents' Dinner is broken. Fix it or end it. He's, of course, one of my favorite writers. He's got a way with words. Would you end it or try to fix it?
I'd fix it. It's supposed to be, this event is supposed to be a celebration of the First Amendment and a fundraiser to raise scholarship money for future journalists. That's such a noble goal. But we
only have 20 seconds left, Nan.
Bring a conservative comedian on next year. Don't forget, it's the left that wants to suppress
this is my theory. I think the comedian's always a problem, and I actually think that the president and elected leaders are funnier anyway because they get the joke.
Let them roast each other.
I agree. All right, Mo Alithi and Nan Hayworth, thank you very much. We'll be right back. Election's about 6 months away. Today, Fox News unveils the 2018 midterm power rankings. Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor and the editor of Halftime Report, joins me. You must love this day, revealing power rankings.
How good could life possibly be, Dana Perino? We are, in fact, unveiling our new graphics, our new look, our new map, our new power rankings, all of that. And I am in the greatest place in the world. I am in West Virginia. We're here in Morgantown because we're getting ready for the big Fox News debate in the West Virginia Senate primary that's going to take place here tomorrow. So, yes, I am agog and a Twitter.
So tell me a little bit about this map. I don't think you can see it, but I'm going to put it up here for our viewers because you know this map. You're saying that, well, you tell me what you're saying. You got Republicans at 49 and Dems at 44. What do those numbers mean?
So when you get down to it, right now, Well, I'll put it this way. We're going to try to make it simpler for people to keep track of the midterm election. We've sorted out the gubernatorial races, the House races, and then what you see there, the Senate races, and we have sorted them into the races that are probably not going to be that competitive, the races that might be competitive for both Republicans and Democrats, and then the toss-ups. And what you see there in the middle are those 7 seats in the United States Senate where really it's anybody's game. West Virginia is one of those, but so are the races in Indiana, so are the races in Florida, Missouri, North Dakota. I'm forgetting a state, and I'm sorry, whatever state I'm forgetting. We're looking at that section as this is where control of the Senate will be decided. This is where the future of the Trump agenda is going to get decided. This is where it's either going to be make or break for Democrats in their bid to make this a really great year, or a chance for Republicans to steal a march here. And can they actually pick up some Senate seats and grow their majority there, even if things get tough in the House? So we got it all right there, and hopefully a sortable, easy-to-use way.
Why did you move Indiana from likely Republican to leans Republican, or toss-up even?
Because they have, it's a toss-up. Previously, we had it categorized. We talked about this before. We had categorized it as a race where it seemed very likely that the Republicans were going to pick up this Democratic seat. Joe Donnelly sort of impossibly vulnerable as a Democrat in Mike Pence's home state. But guess what? The Republican primary there has turned into a total disaster. It is as ugly and mean as any that's taking place in the country. It's expensive, and they're playing up each other's negatives while allowing Donnelly to sit back and rest on his laurels, raise money, and stay positive. That's hurting the Republican chances to pick up what should have been their easiest grab out of those 4 toss-up red states that are represented by Democrats.
Well, I'm going to enjoy looking over those a little bit more. There's so much more to talk about, and I know you're looking forward to tomorrow. Hopefully you'll go get some sort of delicious sandwich for your lunch, and we'll check back in with you tomorrow. Chris Stirewalt, thank you.
You bet.
And you can watch the big West Virginia Republican Senate debate tomorrow here on Fox News Channel, moderated by Bret Baier and Martha MacCallum. It starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Breaking news on the Stormy Daniels saga. The adult film actress just filing a new lawsuit against President Trump. A live report from the White House ahead.
Critical primaries, crucial debates. With the balance of power up for grabs, no one has you covered on all things politics like FoxNews.com. Stay informed with interactive, up-to-the-minute information and insight, Fox's exclusive power rankings, and a live look at the battle for control of the Senate. Get it all now at FoxNews.com/midterms.
Adult film actress Stormy Daniels filing a federal lawsuit today, accusing President Trump of defamation. Kevin Corke is standing by at the White House. Kevin, this was not breaking news that I expected today, but you have it for us.
There you go, right? Okay, so here is the latest lawsuit. And Dana, I say the latest lawsuit because as we've been sort of following this saga, we know that this is just the latest in a series of lawsuits doled out by the attorney for Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, as she is known legally. Now, this is kind of a usual tactic in the legal field. What you do is you just kind of use whatever you can get to get in front of a judge, Dana, because you just never know when you'll strike oil. Now, in this case, this lawsuit, Daniels says that one of the president's statements on Twitter, in effect, accused her of identifying an individual unlawfully. Well, the basis of that claim, by the way, stems from a specific tweet on April 18th. During that tweet, the president sort of quipped that sketch that Daniels was sort of giving to investigators, well, he sort of quipped that it was of a non-existent man and a total con job. Well, as you can well imagine, we have not heard from the White House on this, because usually what happens is they simply send you over to the president's private attorneys. Do know this. This will not likely be the last lawsuit that we hear about, Dana, because the way this works is you want to keep this in the courts. If you are the attorney for Stormy Daniels, in this case Michael Avenatti, you want to keep this going. Maybe you get a little discovery. Maybe you get a chance to, I don't know, get the president under oath at some point. So this is just another in a series of lawsuits, this time for defamation by tweet, which may be a first. Dana, back to you.
Yeah, I guess if they're successful, we could have some legal precedents being set, but we'll see what happens. Kevin Corke from the White House, thank you.
You bet.
Arizona parents are scrambling to find child care as a teacher strike enters its second week. Some 800,000 students are affected by the walkout that started last Thursday. Teachers are demanding a 20% raise, as well as a pay increase for support staff and restoration of $1 billion in state aid that was cut since the recession. So I'm going to have a special guest on the show tomorrow, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, joining me to talk about all the foreign policy challenges facing this White House and her new book, Political Risk: How Businesses and Organizations Can Anticipate Global Insecurity. Certainly, there couldn't be better timing for her to join us because we have news from Israel today about Iran lying about its nuclear weapons program that feeds into the president's decision about what to do with that deal by May 12th. You have the North Korea issue that she can talk about, and certainly also immigration. So plenty to talk about tomorrow and more on Fox News for the rest of the day. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dana. Chef's up after the break.